Hello and welcome back to the Good Leader Podcast. I'm Will Vanderhart.
I'm Will James.
And today you're going to love it because we have got Tammy Comer here and we've already had a great conversation. I actually wish that we'd started the podcast recording before we actually said hello, but we're going to say hello now. Tammy, welcome to you. It's great to have you here with us.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
So tell us a bit about yourself. You've come all the way over from LA, not just to have a podcast with us, but you've come over for the leadership conference.
Yeah, was invited to just speak there, talk. Pete Hughes had asked me to share my story. And friends with John Thompson, who did a spiritual warfare breakout session. So.
Wow. Well, we're going to get into that in a minute. You're married to John Mark and you've got 3 children, teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what's life like in LA for you on a normal day?
Oh man. Well, it hasn't been normal since the fires. There were fires in LA that it was kind of like living through the apocalypse a little bit. We were evacuated and basically God in his kindness preserved our home, but our drive to and from school in Santa Monica has turned into quite a commute. It was few hours every day.
Wow.
So it's not really a normal season for us, but I guess I say that to just say it's been kind of a wild season, but we love Topanga. It's very beautiful and there's birds and trees, and whereas you think of LA, it's very concrete and not as nice,
Yeah.
Very lots of people, but up where we live in the mountains, it's quite lovely.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And you guys have been involved in church leadership now for a pretty long time.
Yeah.
I mean, 15, 20 years
20
now,
years,
more 20 years,
yeah. More than that, actually, probably now.
Yeah. And between you, I mean, your ministry has been pretty prolific, but, helping us understand rhythms of leadership, rhythms of rest, spiritual warfare, battles and blessings. And you've lived that story, yourself in quite a major way. So we're going to get onto that first, but our leadership podcast is all about good leadership. I'd love to open up to you. You've seen influential leaders come and go, but what in your mind distinguishes a good leader versus an influential leader? What are you looking for in terms of the character of a leader?
That's a good question. I feel like the character of a leader, integrity is high. So, and humility. Because every person, we all have coping mechanisms, and knowing what your coping mechanisms are is really important because everybody has toxic ones and we can acquire healthier ones. But if we aren't aware of them, then we can lead out of our wounding. And leading out of your wounding always leaves collateral damage in your wake. So you can be some of the most gifted leaders aren't humble enough, in my opinion, sometimes to accept, really deal with their shadow side.
Yeah.
And if you don't, even if you're really gifted, there's a time stamp on it before people get hurt, and a lot of the time that's their family. Often it's them because. So I would just say integrity and humility to be able to accept your own limitations and try and come into alignment with reality to just live in alignment with your values, but be honest, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's correct. I mean, that's what we're all about, isn't it, Will? How can we help people? I love what you said just about understanding, recognizing your shadow side, and going, that's true. How do I live being aware of the other side of me? I think that's really key.
So it gives me the thought, what you're saying, that if we take the assumption that everyone's doing their best, some people find it very difficult to exercise humility or to have a kind of a humble stance. And as you were talking, I was thinking, humility, having a humble stance actually is a way of receiving. It makes us so much more able to receive. I wonder whether you have noticed or whether you have any advice about how do people grow in humility? How do they build humility, given that that's a way then for them to actually get more in the long run?
I feel like I think sometimes I think we assume that humility comes through humiliation, which it can. But to humble yourself can just mean to be teachable, and you can choose it. Like I would say, like I think you don't have to be vulnerable with everyone, but you do need to have some accountability on a character level with people who actually know you, who can call you to a higher standard. I think that is where we see a lot of like the breakdown between very gifted, kind of just going, like almost just like running, almost like the Moses model taken to an extreme in an unhealthy way, where it's like, I'm the leader and I just go. And there's no accountability. There's no real like, nobody really helping them, even when, because usually a person like that is trying to do a good thing, but nobody is perfect. And I also think like evil wants to undermine the goodness of God and any kind of good movement of God. We'll try to get to our flesh. And I mean, we're humans. Like that's like part of being human. So I think accountability on it, even if it's just like having some kind of structural thing where you feel like you have some character accountability structured in some way in order to help you live honest. Where there's not such a gap between like who you present to be and who you are in private. I feel like not everybody needs to see that, but a few people do for accountability. It's just important.
Yeah, that's so good. That whole rushing thing, I think, is so perpetual. You know, people kind of get gassed up by ministry, and they want more of the good stuff. And when I was just starting out in ministry, the vicar who was mentoring me said, "If the devil can't stop you doing what he doesn't want you to do, he'll get you to do too much of it."
Oh, totally.
I remember being like, "Wow, that's really weird advice." But actually, over 20 years of ministry, I've seen that be so true. Like, actually, the devil can't stop you doing ministry, but it's really easy to end up doing just too much and then
totally.
getting like that fatigue and then the brittleness that kind of comes in with that. And it really undoes you. Now, some leaders are humble because they are like, you know, in good accountable relationships, and hopefully everyone is, but you know, we know they're not all. But sometimes, you know, humility comes on us and because of vulnerability, and that can come in the form of sickness and illness. And your story, Tammy, really fascinated me. I mean, you were on a really difficult health journey for about 15 years, and yet from a distance, you've been leading quite a prolific life and ministry and family. Tell us a bit about that story when you know, as that illness began to impact your life, and how did you retain your leadership role, your role in your family? Like, what was that wrestle like for you?
Oh man, I would say, I think that my coping mechanisms were denial, minimizing, and avoiding, probably. And I think that it worked for me for a lot of years until it didn't.
Okay.
And then when it didn't, it just was really it was humiliating. But what I found, I guess I could say, is that God meets us in the place of reality, not in idealism. And the struggle with, so like I would say the struggle with some of like social media, some of like being well known or leading in certain ways, is there's so much assumption put on what your life is like based on your Instagram post or whatever it is. But that is, it almost just magnifies the disappointment and the grief of reality. And if you're not careful, I think really idealism can kind of crush the joy of your reality, and reality actually has the potential, even if it's broken and even if it's disappointing, to be quite beautiful. Like,
we were talking briefly, weren't we, about marriage before, and we've all been married for a while. And I think one of the secrets to marriage is actually surrendering to the death of fantasy,
yes, 100%.
so that you're able to receive instead and to celebrate and enjoy reality.
Absolutely.
It's like, and reality has a different beauty maybe for the one that from the one that you might have been holding, but until you let go,
Yeah.
you can't take up what
Totally.
really is on offer.
100%. Yes.
Yeah, that's so true. Because
So true.
that kind of, I guess, the envy of other people's realities becomes many people's fantasies, and there's so much that the enemy gets into with that comparison culture. I mean, you've mentioned social media there. Can I ask what you advise your children around social media?
We have just really strict rules. Like, our kids still don't have social media.
Wow.
Our oldest now does, if he wants it, but I don't even think he's that into it. I don't even think he has an Instagram, which is funny. He's 19.
Wow.
But we didn't let our kids have smartphones till they're not supposed to get. They've got dumb phones, meaning like we closed everything off, no internet on the phones or anything at 16. So they didn't even get phones till 16, and then they can have social media at 18.
So can I just say you've made every British parent feel absolutely terrible. But
I mean, the thing is, though.
I'm just joking, Tammy.
No,
It's
no,
okay.
I know.
I'm okay about that.
Well, you know what? It's honestly, my husband is very intentional. He's probably like the most intentional person I've ever met. Very disciplined and reads all the things, I mean, and I'm much more like laid back. But it's easier if you set the rules when they're younger than trying to reset the rules as they get older.
Yeah, no, that's so true. Yeah.
So we never had, because our kids were little, and John Mark was already reading all the literature on it and just setting stuff really young. They never, it wasn't really even an option till later. And the kids, even now, they'll be like, we think you should have they actually, last week were telling us at the kitchen table, they were like, well, I think it's actually good that you didn't give us a phone till later, but you should have given it to us in freshman year in high school instead of sophomore, because that was too hard. But they're like, we were glad we didn't have it in middle school. So I don't know. I mean, we do our best. Nobody's perfect. The thing is, we have, I don't know. We have, idealism too. Like, that doesn't mean that they still have laptops.
Right.
Sure.
But it's interesting when we're talking about the idea between the gap between kind of reality and actually the beauty of our reality and also the kind of world of fantasy and idealism. And you've articulated that so beautifully. Like, in the life of leaders, we have this idealism and then our reality. And the greatest danger is the gap between those two things. And, I asked you about social media on that basis, that I fear that, I see the gap in my children's experience, like between some people's realities and then, some people's, fantasies as presented as realities, and then the realities that my children are living. And I think that gap creates envy and brokenness, and that sets false expectations as well for life. And when you go through the hard valleys that you've been through, if you imagine life as just, walking on the clouds, then you go through what you've gone through, and that's, it's a surprise, it's a terror, and you aren't necessarily equipped to deal with it.
I think it's amazing in this conversation how we've gone from your quite bold sort of opening around coping mechanisms, avoidance, denial, idealism, and then we're talking about social media. But I'm wondering, so in light of that idea that actually, if we're prepared to meet God in reality, who do we find God to be, and how do we find life to be? I wonder what you found there. What do you feel that you found in the reality that maybe is better than you'd thought it would be?
I would say, That's a good question. All
He's
good
really
questions,
good at asking
guys.
great questions.
Great job.
I try and
Good
make them
job,
easy for
both
the
of you
guests,
guys.
but Will, he's really
No,
difficult.
I mean, I think that naturally, most people, myself included, especially when I was younger, not now as much, live with a natural sense of entitlement that tomorrow will be just like today. When you're sick, you don't have that luxury. So there's an awareness that life is short, that you may not feel good tomorrow. So if you have, if you have agent like capacity, be present now, because tomorrow you might not be well. That entitlement of tomorrow creates expectation that I think often does not result in happiness or joy, because gratitude is forgotten about. And I think the invitation is for us to, I think COVID was a big wake-up call for a lot of people, because all of a sudden everyone was afraid of getting sick. It was afraid of what the implication was. But it's the first time people were sort of like sober enough about tomorrow that it actually made them check themselves a little bit. And I think there's an invitation in that, not to be afraid, but to be awake to the gift of your life. And we can live our lives, I think, very much asleep. And that's what I would say. I would say I'm very aware of the gift of life. I live very grateful for the gift of life. I'm so grateful that I get up and I feel good. That was just not my story for so many years, that that it's ingrained in me. And yet I still see that sometimes when I start to get actually like a cold or sick, I'm like, oh gosh, I used to, oh gosh, like I forgot. Thank you, Lord, for the gift of like actually living.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I actually think that suffering can often be the catalyst for real living, meaningful living. Suffering is not the thing you need to run away from. Suffering is the thing that when you are in it, almost just look at it and try to meet God in that space. I remember when I was I have like a vivid memory of, it was right when I'd gotten I was sitting outside on my deck, having quiet time. I was looking at trees. And my mother-in-law had come to visit me. And I had just been given a diagnosis that was a horrible diagnosis. It was like the pinnacle of all the bad things that I had. It was literally like my worst nightmare of a thing. And it had a 50% chance of increasing in my lifetime. It would cripple my face. It was already present. And it was the first time that I really had to wrestle with God. I mean, I felt like that's what I mean by like the coping mechanisms of denial and kind of the first 10 years of my sickness, I could manage somewhat. I mean, it definitely had repercussions, and I think it was hardest on my husband, to be totally frank, because a huge part of what was affected by my sickness in those 10 years was my brain. And I was married to an intellectual man who is very intentional, and I could not follow his conversations so much of the time when I was flared up. And my health would come in flares. And I think it created disappointment in him and loneliness. And he would try to move toward me, and I'd try to fake it. Created a lot of shame in me. And what I would say is, sorry, now I'm like rabbit trailing, but what I would say is that like the healthiest and most sweet probably that our marriage has ever been was when I was the sickest. And I think it was because his idealism about how much I could do was dead.
Yeah.
And my performance and denial and, whatever, was also dead.
Yeah.
And so in that place, his therapist once said to us, you guys are experiencing old person love. And we were like, oh, like I see. And it was like this sweet recognition of like, reality had become the catalyst of both grief and real intimacy. And that was kind of, new, honestly, in some ways for us, because, I just think, it's
so powerful.
So I don't even remember what my rabbit
No,
trail was
I
about.
know.
So,
I mean, look, I think,
that part, and then I
yeah.
just totally
No, but
changed it.
I mean, that's
Sorry.
amazing. Thank you for being so vulnerable with us.
yeah.
And I think that, like, you're describing that stripped back place where you've got nothing left to offer and the other person's got nothing left to offer either. And I think that, in the spirit of a conversation around coming to reality, I mean, there couldn't be a better illustration of the joy of being stripped back. And that's ultimately how we come to the Lord. Like when
100%.
when we really find intimacy with Jesus, it's not because we've come with any pretense, it's because we've come like, Lord, here I am, like take me as I am, like
Totally.
I'm in a mess.
I remember what I was going to say.
Yeah, go on.
Okay, so it was like, I was sitting on the back deck. My mother-in-law came to see me, and I just remember I'd gotten that diagnosis, and there was a couple other things that were happening diagnosis-wise that were really crazy. It was like everything came to head at this one point. And I remember she came out to see me, and she said, Tam, how are you doing? And I was like, this is just hard. This is like too much. And I just remember her saying, she said, I don't know if this is good advice or bad advice. She goes, but go to the dark place and meet Jesus there. She said, don't try to run away from it. And she's deaf, actually, and she had lost her hearing. And so I knew I could trust her because she's very wise and godly and integrated and loves Jesus and all the things. And so I was like, And really, that was my story. I mean, I feel like there's this story of these two monks, and I love this story. It's like one of my favorite stories. But it's like of a young monk and an old monk, and the young monk says to the old monk, Father, do you still wrestle with the devil? And he says, no, son, I don't wrestle with the devil anymore. He's grown tired of me, and I've grown tired of him. No, son, I wrestle with God now. And he said, you wrestle with God and you hope to win? And he said, no, I wrestle with God and I hope to lose. And I think there is a wrestling of desperation that you can get to where your wrestling results in surrender that actually has the capacity to free you up to joy, because you have it's almost just like, Lord, okay. Like I knew in that moment for me, what that release looked like was, this is too much and I trust you, because where else am I going to go? So I'm just going to, and I knew I'd have to re-wrestle again if my faith progressed more. But for me in that place, go to the dark place and meet Jesus there, was that wrestling of surrender. And I was so grateful that I did, because it made me still able to live. Otherwise, I don't know how I could have really parented or been just kept doing it without going into some deep, deep depression. I just didn't want to waste the last bit of what I thought was the last bit of my time. And then God surprised me.
God healed you. I mean, I think we've got time to go into the complexity of that story, but I mean, this was a spiritual deliverance as well as a complete physical remission from your illness.
Yeah.
I mean, you look really well, which is great.
You.
So, but obviously, anyone watching this would not realize how you were very, very seriously sick, and you have a story of complete miraculous healing.
Absolutely.
I mean, how was has it? You've gone through such a lot, and I mean, I could listen to you for days. I'm still just about struggling not to cry when I heard you talking about that story. It's so amazing. But just help us as we come into land today on, what's been the impact of recovery, in terms of how suffering has taught you and how intentionally you want to live now that you're well, because it's easy, isn't it, to forget what you've been through.
Yeah. I would say probably two things. One is I never realized how much fear lived with. And because I'm so laid back by nature, I think again, coping mechanisms, pleaser, very type 9 on the Enneagram, very peaceful, don't ruffle feathers. But realizing how much of my life I was living just with blinders to darkness and always with a positivity lens. And so then to be my story being so wildly unexpected and just getting like radically healed and delivered from a demonic curse. I didn't even know that could happen. I didn't even have a category for that. To have it be like, almost like, I would just say like over and over, it was almost like when we realized we were going to break this like curse or whatever, and it was like super dark, scary thing to do. I didn't, I think just how often Jesus in the scripture says, do not be afraid. Just come knowing you're going to go like kind of, I didn't know like looking at evil. I was so afraid to even like look at it. I feel like I kind of lived more like this to evil. And so just like, oh, it's probably fine. No, it's, But then to have to really look at it, but really meeting Jesus in the dark place. It's like Psalm 139. It's like, even if I say, surely the darkness will hide me and the light will be like night around me, even the darkness is not dark to you. Yeah. The darkness will shine like the day, for darkness is as light to you. And I think our fears can really dictate how we live. And it really diminishes the fullness of life. Because the peace of Christ comes, it's almost like being anchored in the peace of Christ means you have to be able to hold both the brokenness and the darkness of things and the hope and desire for what you idealize right in the midst of reality, while holding reality, and really try to be connected to God, where you're like, Lord, meet me in reality and let me like hold these things while engaging in reality, not like looking at it through one lens or the other. Some people are I lived so long looking through a positivity lens. The other, then it was like once I even had an awareness that evil could even have power, that kind of stuff in such a specific way, that was scary. But realizing, oh wow, God, you are my anchor and I don't have to be afraid. And it doesn't mean I don't feel fear anymore. It just means that I don't let fear dictate what I do. And that's an agency choice. That is not an emotional choice. And I feel like people need to remember that, like, everybody feels fear. It's like a healthy part of being a human. Like but the agency to choose to trust God is, and based on what we believe is true about his character, that agency will move you into more peaceful engagement that is honest, filled with integrity, and like tethered to reality and to what you see as like your highest, values, hopefully in alignment with God's ways, to be able to live out the calling of God on your life without being so like tossed to and fro. So I would say that is like a huge thing that I've learned. And then gratitude, honestly, and devotion to God. Like the gift of, I feel like devotion is like when I was preparing to like go meet with the leader, the pastor guy who did deliverance and exorcism with John Mark, that the whole week before, I kept hearing that this phrase when I would be in prayer of, you have to be holy. And my favorite definition of holiness is to be fully devoted. And I think I've always loved Jesus. And been devoted to him. But I think my realizing the kindness of God, like I learned about trust through my suffering, but the kindness of God through my healing. And I just feel like God is generous and kind. And I never want to forget that, ever. I just, and we think of holiness almost as like cut yourself off from sin. It's bad, bad, bad. But I'm like, oh my gosh, like, but when it's just like when you're in love with someone, you just want to do, like, you're like, oh, like, you're the best. I just want to make you so happy and pumped and like excited and delighted. And that is what devotion cultivates when we set ourselves apart. And I never want to forget that either.
Wow.
So
That's amazing, Tammy. Thank you. I think we've sadly run out of time. Wow. You right? Can you speak?
Yeah. I mean, so wonderful. I mean, one of the things I'm really going to take from this conversation with a lot of gratitude is the ability to actually have space in our imagination created to see the possibility of hope and goodness in suffering, that we can easily think that suffering is all cost. We can all focus on the cost and not realize that actually there's incredible riches.
Oh, so much. There's like, and that, I think even it's beautiful, like, to realize that we sometimes forget that Jesus was a man of many sorrows, and he had more joy than anybody else. Both can be true. And so just because you suffer, it doesn't mean that you're bad or that it's not seen or that God forgot about you. But it can become a real place of encounter. And it's hard.
And I think that is a great message
Yeah.
to sort of end with and to offer.
Yeah, I mean, if you're watching this and you have been lost in suffering and you feel alone and you feel abandoned, you feel wounded, I just really want to encourage you. I mean, just listen again to this incredible testimony that Tammy's offering us, that you are not abandoned, that whether you get to the heavens or to the depths of the sea, that you cannot escape the love of God made known to us in Christ Jesus. And whatever your circumstances, that there's always hope. There's eternal hope, but there's also present hope. And so we want to pray you're blessed by this testimony. We want to thank you so much for being with us. We've loved being with you. We'd love to get you back. Come back when you're back in the UK. We're going to go
Thanks,
again.
guys. I loved being with you guys too.
It's been so
awesome.
fun. Bless you. Thank you for your story. Will, it's been great to be here. Thank you so much for being with us on this week's edition of the Good Leader Podcast. I'm Will Vanderhart.
I'm Will James.
And good night. It's great to see you. See you again soon.